I tried to learn one of the world's most popular speedruns in 24 hours to see if it was possible to speedrun a speedrun. This challenge may be the hardest thing I've ever done, mainly because of the game I chose, the original Super Mario Bros. Referred to by some as the human limit just because of how refined and perfected this run is. Now, obviously, my goal isn't to hit a world record. Not even close. This game is filled with enough frame-perfect niche tricks to make even the most die-hard players speedrun for a different game to play. A lot of these moves are impossible to learn in a single day. Also, if I wanted to spend my time counting frames, I would just go to the MoMA. My goal is a lot more attainable, 6 minutes. An entire minute over the current world champion. As a professional Mario speedrunner, this isn't really a good time. In fact, 6 minutes doesn't even break the top 1,000. But as a person who has quite literally never speedran before in his life, let alone beaten this game at all, this goal was going to take me a lot of work, a bit of faith, and more casualties than the Black Plague. So let's get started. Our first task at hand was pretty simple. I wouldn't feel right learning the tips and tricks of such a historic game without organically beating it first. So all I had to do was beat the game. I mean, people can beat it in 5 minutes, so it can't be that bad, right? Plus, it'll give me a bit of time to scout the stages and see how hard it was actually going to be. I'll explain the levels as I go, and I'll put them in a little tier list to rank them in difficulty as well. World 1-1 was pretty simple because I learned it as a party trick a couple of years ago. This level is technically not that difficult, at least not for this challenge since I don't have to be perfect and a second or so of time lost won't be the end of me. The level is a little precise, but since I already knew it, it goes in C tier. Not that hard. 1-2 was definitely a bit more difficult. Since I didn't really know much of the strategy behind it, I actually got my first game over here because I was trying to go faster than my brain could understand. The second time around, I just awkwardly made my way through as slowly as I could to ensure getting to the warp pipes without dying. But still, beating this stage in general is kind of treacherous and a massive leap in difficulty compared to 1-1. So I'll put it in B tier. 4-1 wasn't challenging at all. This stage is practically just a straight shot while some jerk sits on a cloud chucking spike turtles at you. But besides that, it's probably the easiest stage. There are 2 pipes you have to jump over while piranhas are nipping at your ankles. But besides that, it's simple. Easiest stage in the game. D tier. At this point, we've beaten 3 out of the 8 stages needed for completing the run at 155. Nearly halfway through the game, only using 1/3 of my time, I was kind of confident. And this was barely my second attempt. Hell, at this rate, I may be able to finish this challenge before lunchtime. The word for what I'm explaining is arrogance, because 4-2 would serve as our first major hurdle. In order to properly beat this stage, you have to hit this brick block to the left after the elevator section to spawn a plant. Afterwards, you have to spawn a secret block right below the right side to awkwardly jump above and climb the beanstalk. Just doing this in a normal run is already a little clunky and annoying. However, doing it in a speed run is a whole new can of worms. This is the shortest stage in the run, but this stupid little block alone makes this stage difficulty A tier. There's also a really fancy trick that's supposed to happen here, but I'll explain that later. 8-1 is where the difficulty in this game starts to really take off. Like a lot. There's significantly more enemies, the jumps are a lot tighter, and as a person who hasn't beaten this game without cheats ever, this is the stage where I knew I was going to see my first game over. I opted out of stopping the timer for the next run just to see how long it would take me to even get a successful playthrough of the game. I immediately tried again, only this time I got a game over in 1-2. I don't choke under pressure. Unless it's like a lot of pressure, then I'll definitely choke. Bro. After a lot more deaths than I'd like to count, I made my way back to 8-1 to learn the layout and instantly got another game over. I repeated this cycle of getting to 8-1 and just insta-dying for the next 20 minutes until I finally beat this stage for the first time. Now, oddly enough, even though this level caused me more casualties than any other stage so far, it was still very doable. Some jumps had weird timing, but still, it's a long stage, so A tier. 8-2 immediately starts off with some stupid, stinky, boo-boo banana bull. This stupid-ass turtle jumping down the steps while a Lakitu throws a spike shell at you. Yeah, it's stupid and mean, and a game over. After 15 minutes of grinding just to get another shot at this, I was ready to try it again, and I instantly died. Twice. I'm gonna be seeing this a lot, aren't I? Finally, returning to 8-2, I changed my approach to hopefully see more of the level. And sure, I only got about 3 feet further, but hey, progress is progress. I basically stay in this hellish cycle of dying, restarting, and learning as I go. In Dante's Inferno, this was referred to as the 6th layer of hell. Finally, around 14 minutes later, I'm able to secure my first 8-2 dub and see what 8-3 is all about. 8-2 is by far the hardest stage that I've played. We're gonna have to put this in S tier, right above A. That first jump is just way too mean, and then there's a bunch of precision jumps after, bullet bills trying to blow your ass off, and weirdly placed enemies that make it just awkward overall. Now, 8-3 is, believe it or not, the first time I felt dread. You see, 8-3 introduces an enemy I haven't seen before. A big, unpredictable piece of that exists solely to make sure my run never sees the end. This is a hammer bro. He jumps higher than all the enemies, he moves faster than all the enemies, he throws projectiles that are just wildly unpredictable, and did I mention that he just does it whenever he wants? This guy is so unpredictable that this may as well be a PvP zone. Oh, did I mention that I have to run past 8 of these hell-bent murderers with nothing to lose? Just send me against the Avengers at this point, and I'm sure I'd have an easier time. Like, just look at this. I know there's a specific way that speedrunners normally do this, but when looking up advice from speedrunners on YouTube, I saw them dying to it. And they're goats. I'm a lamb at best. Knowing that I only gave myself 3 chances to get this run completed, I realized just how daunting this task really is. To make matters worse, these dudes are on the second to last level, meaning I could play the rest of the game pretty well and it still won't matter if one of these dudes decides to jump. The word for what I'm feeling is hopelessness. How could Shigeru Miyamoto be so cruel? I started to feel a little defeated. Even getting a chance to attempt this stage again took me over 22 minutes. At this point, since I didn't really care about getting a good time yet and just wanted to make it to the end, I even opted into picking up 1-ups from earlier stages to give me a better shot. Now, some of you may be wondering why I'm not using save states to make my practice easier, and the answer to that is quite simple: honor. If I want to drill this game and learn how to complete it, I should at least be able to win like they did in the 80s. We finally beat this stage, and honestly, I don't know what to rate it on the tier list. The level itself is one of the easiest, with barely any obstacles in the way, but every single one of these hammer bros carry a heavy weight: the ability to end my run the second they see fit. I've played Outlast before, and nothing in that game made me as nervous as one of these turtled haters. Because of them, I'm gonna have to put this in S+ tier. Finally, we got to the final stage in the game, 8-4. Yeah, things really are not looking great. After a quick game over and almost 30 minutes of runs to even get another shot, I die in the exact same spot because I'm bad. I grind for even more, and this time I take a more refined approach to actually see the entire stage. There's pipes to go into, a hidden block I need to use, a water stage with fire in it because why not? And of course, another f***ing hammer bro. Like, what are you doing here, man? Go get a job. And then, the head honcho himself, there's Bowser. For a much smarter and more refined player, Bowser is a predictable obstacle that can be manipulated via frame data and blah blah blah. For me, Bowser is a hammer bro on steroids. He jumps higher, he's much bigger, he throws a million hammers, and he breathes fire. With a moveset that crazy, they should just put his ass in Smash Bros. Oh, I gotta answer this. Yep. Oh, they did. Okay. Alright, okay, so they did. This guy is an absolute mutant. However, through sheer luck and determination, I managed to beat Bowser relatively quickly, putting our first completion at, drumroll please, 2 hours, 39 minutes, 1 second, and 42 milliseconds. Okay, maybe I bit off a teensy tiny bit more than I could chew. No, that's not a mistake. My first official time beating this game was 2:39:01:42, meaning I'd have to shave off 2:33:01:42 if I wanted to win this challenge, which is about 96.25%. Could be worse, but at least I did get to check out the stages and learn the lay of the land. If we take out every single game over, my official first run front to back took 12:07:38, which is 2 times longer than it should be. Now it was time for the hard part, trimming the fat, aka trying to find out what I could do to shave off precious seconds. Now obviously one would believe that this process lies in watching speedruns and just trying to emulate them as best as I can. But since this challenge only allowed me 24 hours, I had to make a lot of specific decisions to properly manage my time correctly. For example, if there was a route that had too many frame perfect or pixel perfect inputs, then it would be practically impossible to learn it in the remaining 20 hours. I'm confident, but I'm not delusional. What would make you think that? When reviewing the world record run, I knew I had to scrub through and find out which tricks I could learn to reduce my runtime and which tricks were just out of reach. Again, I had an entire 6 minutes to defeat the fatty baddie and get the baddie with the fatty, giving me an entire minute to play slower and take more calculated risks to ensure a victory in my first 3 attempts. World 1-1. This stage was mechanically not that difficult, at least not for what I was doing. A 3-second time loss wouldn't be too bad, but I didn't really need to practice this stage at all. Stage 1-2 was my first F that moment. The level is incredibly precise even on a more casual playthrough. There's enemies to dodge, very tight pipe jumps, and at the end of the stage a clip into the wall that is too complicated to even explain, let alone try. This final trick would realistically take me days, weeks, or even months. So I cut my losses and decided for my run I'd take a massive time loss and do the mushroom wee baby run at the top of the stage trick. Sure, I'd lose a couple of seconds, but this was relatively consistent for me, which mattered since we only had 3 attempts. 4-1 is pretty self-explanatory. You just run to the end as fast as you can. There are minor time saves here and there, but nothing too necessary. So I tried to keep my momentum maxed out for the duration of the level. Also, Lakitu is an ass. 4-2 is one of the most annoying stages in the run. Doing it anywhere near perfect would also be impossible for the time I had to learn it. You see, a speedrunner's 4-2 includes glitching into a wall, keeping perfect momentum and hitting a tight jump to spawn a beanstalk without accidentally smacking into this invisible block, and then a wrong warp into a pipe to avoid the animation of climbing the beanstalk. However, I'm a human, so I won't be learning that in 24 hours. F that times 2. Instead, looking at a glitchless run, all I have to do is these 2 precise jumps and climb the beanstalk. It may not seem that hard, but again, this game is 38 years old. Stopping your momentum and jumping this precisely is pretty funky. Still, I have an entire minute to goof off, so with a bit of drilling, I'll probably be fine. 8-1 is a horrible place. I'd sandwich it right below the back rooms and right above literal hell. However, the majority of this stage is just a straight shot while avoiding predictable enemies. Sure, it would take some grinding, but I was glad to know that there wasn't a ton of tech in it like the earlier stages. Still, since this run is meant to be done as Small Mario, a simple mistake would be the end of me, so I had to be pretty careful. 8-2 is the same as 8-1, only now there's bullets. It's more about being able to keep your top speed the entire way through without stopping at all. This little trick in the beginning looked easy enough, but I just couldn't figure out the timing, so that's definitely going to be a few seconds lost already. After that, it's mainly muscle memory, and a couple of tricks that are too tight for me to rely on. My pace is nowhere near world record, but I'm sure I can at least get this level to be somewhat consistent. 8-3, aka the Hammer Bros Thunderdome, was initially a level that scared the bejeebus out of me, but I figured that there had to be some sort of technique to beat these guys every single time that I could learn from watching a video. And guess what? I was kinda wrong. Sure, there's specific routes you can take in the beginning to kill the hammer bro on the bottom, but the jump is a little tight. However, on the second double platform, you can jump early and then react to where the hammer bros are. If there's an opening in the middle, you let go of the jump button. If there's an opening at the top, you hold the jump button. Simple enough. Then afterwards, there's just 4 more jerks to get past in order to finish the stage. The problem is that these 4 have the ability to ruin your run. If they jump, you have to let go of your jump so that you can kill them in midair. However, there's a chance that they jump and throw a hammer at the apex of their jump, turning it into a kamikaze attack. So I just prayed for a good pattern and moved on. 8-4, the final stage, was pretty self-explanatory. I just had to be fast. Duh. There's a way to avoid the secret block by doing a frame-perfect input and jumping off the side of the pipe, but I wasn't going to learn that in the time I had, so secret block it is. There's a tiny wrong warp you could do as well, where you run to the right to load a pipe's warp zone and then double back to the pipe before it to save a second or two. This trick is the only trick in the game that is incredibly easy, and believe it or not, I got it on my first try. Then there's a swimming section, which is just swimming fast, and finally a hammer bro and Bowser immediately after. 2 hammer bros were already enough to take me out, but now it's 1 hammer bro and his big brother that looks like he's competing in Mr. Olympia. You can definitely predict Bowser's movements if you're fast enough, but I never really was. So awkwardly waiting him out was the only option I truly had. And now that we looked at all the stages from a professional's point of view, I knew it was time to practice. But I honestly needed a break because my fingies hurt, so I took a nap. So I just woke up from a nap after our first block of practice. We practiced for about 4.5 hours, and unfortunately, the first 2 hours and 39 minutes of that practice block was just me beating the game for the first time. I know, it's tragic. But fortunately, after we finished the game for the first time and I was able to go and actually see what speedrunners are doing to beat the game fast, my time for the first half of the game dropped significantly. I think I'm currently getting to the end of 8-1 at about 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which leave me 2 minutes and 30 seconds to beat the final 3 levels in the game, which is a lot easier said than done. I still have about 30 seconds left of me time to kind of mess around and do things a little bit slower, because I think the world record is about 2 minutes in general from that point onward, so I don't have to play perfect, but I still have to play kind of good, which is just a really big ask for someone who only has 1 day to do this. However, we still have about 15 hours left to practice and do good enough on our 3 attempts to beat the challenge. I'm kind of confident about it, but I think the biggest problem right now is my hands hurt. Like, I'm not even joking. My left thumb is so tender right now, and I'm not ready for 2 or even 3 more practice blocks. But you know what? I'm a god gamer. I gotta do what I gotta do. Identifying my weaknesses, I decided that I should spend the majority of my time practicing on World 8, the second half of my run. After about an hour, we got our 8-1 down to 58 seconds with the flagpole animation. I trained 8-2 immediately after and spent a bunch of time trying to learn the early jump, but failed relentlessly. Then, when beating the level once or twice, I decided to start my run from the beginning just to see how I was doing on time. And believe it or not, I managed to get to the flagpole at the end of 8-2 at 4 minutes and 22 seconds, meaning I'd have an entire 1 minute and 38 seconds left to beat the final 2 stages if I could just keep this pace. But obviously, I couldn't rely on it yet because of the hammer bros. I knew at this point that I was in a lot of trouble. No matter how well I played, there were 8 chances for me to lose on 8-3 alone. But my mom didn't raise a quitter, so I decided to resort to a tactic I only call upon when I have no other choices left: hope. Even with practice, I found my runs ending in spots it shouldn't be, jumps that were easy, or just places that were flat out stupid. And here's where I realized that there was a secret final boss in speedrunning. Sure, learning patterns, inputs, and developing muscle memory was hard enough, but the further you get in your speedrun, the more and more your nerves start to play tricks on you, realizing that any second one missed input can effectively destroy the run you put together. It was a mental pressure I've never never really dealt with. And in the later stages, it really starts to grind away at your abilities. But hey, if my life ever taught me anything, it's that much like existential dread, nerves are better if you just don't think about it. It was now 2 in the morning and my left thumb was hurting pretty bad, so I decided to finally get some rest. We have 10 hours and 40 minutes to get a bit of sleep in, grind a bit more, and hopefully get our sub 6 minute. I slept as well as I could because I knew that performance is often tied to the quality of sleep. I had only about 2 hours left to practice my runs and make them consistent enough to get a sub 6 minute time in only 3 tries. I was very confident in the first half. Sure, there were a few tricks that I still wasn't getting, but I was overall doing it fast enough for my challenge. Since my time was limited at this point, I figured now would be the best time to try to put it all together. I could beat all of these levels pretty consistently on their own, but beating them in a row without dying once was going to be a tall order. I practiced as many complete runs as I could, but realistically I never even got past 8-3, so I decided to stay there for a bit and grind as many hammer bros as I could. Time was becoming a luxury I just couldn't afford, and spending 30 minutes on a single stage did not bode well for my goal. With less than 1 hour left until I had to be perfect, I spent the last 50 minutes grinding against Bowser, since 8-4 was a stage that I honestly neglected. After getting a successful dub and seeing the princess again, I knew that it was possible. All I had to do was perform nearly perfectly for 6 minutes straight in 1 out of 3 attempts. Surely I had this in the bag, but just in case not, I better start Googling Korean spicy food. And now, it was finally time for the 3 runs. I pounded a coffee and refreshed my mental, and I was ready to play better than I ever played anything in my life. With enough caffeine to replace the red blood cells in my body, I was ready to go. I immediately mess up my first jump because I was nervous. But the time loss isn't too bad. I also jump in places I shouldn't, which slow me down a bit, and I could tell that the nerves were stronger than I had previously thought. I mess up the final stairs and have quite possibly the slowest 1-1 in my entire life. But there was still room to breathe, so I got my head back in the game. My world 1-2 isn't bad either. It's not fantastic, but it was good enough to get me through, and the mushroom strat lets me tank a blow later. 4-1 goes perfectly because it's a pretty simple stage, and I start 4-2 at just over 2 minutes. All I had to do was nail the jump after the elevator and things were looking good. It may not look like much, but hitting that block as Big Mario still gives me nightmares. So I was excited to get it on my first try. However, I mess up the hidden block jump shortly after, costing me a second, but again, it's not a big deal. Now it was finally time to start the real challenge, World 8. Every single one of these stages were a masterclass of momentum, precision jumps, and the occasional RNG, so I was definitely terrified going down the warp pipe. My 8-1 starts beautifully, nailing the first plant jump. I continue forward and nail another 2 pipe jumps, and here's where I started to feel the flow state, where it feels as if I'm not even thinking while my avatar-like mind carries me to a victory. Unfortunately, a few seconds later, this paratroopa knocks me back into my mortal coil and reverts me to Lil Mario, which was terrifying cause now any blow could end my entire run. I managed to squeak to the end and realize now how well I've been doing. If you compare my gameplay to the first run I had 24 hours ago, it didn't even look like the same species. I felt good, I felt unstoppable, and I got a little overzealous. There's no way, bro. Not only did I die at the start of the level, but I didn't even get hit. I just dove into the 1 block hole. I can't even tell you why I did it. My brain just froze. And with that, one of our 3 lives was gone. It looks like we're doing really good. It's the nerves. It's the fucking nerves, man. It's the nerves. I catch my breath and get ready to try again. I had 2 tries left to get a sub 6 minute. Sure, my first run wasn't perfect, but it was a decent pace for this challenge. If I could just tighten up my 8-2, we had a really good chance. My 1-1 goes perfectly. I was even 7 seconds up on the in-game timer compared to my first run, which is a massive time save. Maybe the first failure was a necessary evil, because now I truly felt like the man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. My 1-2 goes decently. I miss my first jump into the roof, but I immediately get there on my second, and I sprint to the warp pipes at the end. My overall pace was still faster than before, so we were looking pretty good. 4-1 starts with only a minute and 15 seconds on the clock. Again, this stage isn't too difficult and is practically a straight shot to the end, but I did have some choice words. I shouldn't have slept. I should have just practiced all night. All I was begging for was to not go out like a chump. After wearing my emotions on my sleeve, I shake off the cobwebs, ready to play better, to get further and be faster. All I had to do was nail the jump on 4-2 and we could have another shot at World 8. It was time for me to perform. So might be going better than run 1. Yeah, but it depends on this little section here on 4-2. That's where I lose a lot of time. There's no way. There's no way. And I die to a simple jump. Like, this isn't even a hard trick. I just fell in. I figured the time loss was only a couple seconds because it was an insta-death. So I tried to perform and finish the run to see if I could still make my tight deadline. I completely botched the elevator jump and have to awkwardly position myself to break the block and get the beanstalk, losing even more time. Then I head to World 8 like a bat out of hell, knowing that even one frame lost would be the key to an early grave. I mess up a pretty simple jump for no reason because I'm clearly nervous, but besides that, it goes fine. And then I said I don't want to go out like a chump. And how do I go out, chat? I died to just a normal piranha plant. Not even on a high pipe, just a normal little guy. Knowing the run was completely dead, I tried to finish the stage with my final life, and I jump into another hole, ending my second run. We were now on our last attempt. I needed to collect myself. Oh, I died on the 4-2 first jump, bro. No way, dude. No way. It was time to start our final run. Our 1-1 goes as smoothly as ever, a bit slower than run 2, but definitely good enough. 1-2 and 4-1 I pass with flying colors because they're consistent, and now we were back on 4-2, the level that ended our last run. This time I nail the initial secret block jump, but mess up a few times trying to climb onto the beanstalk. Still, I was feeling pretty good. I just had to get my nerves in order. It was time for our final World 8. I had to put up or shut up. The next 3 minutes of my life would decide my fate. Would I go down as a god gamer, or just as a crazy Puerto Rican man eating spicy food and crying in a park? I prayed it wasn't the latter. My 8-1 goes better than ever before. Not only do I take 0 damage and keep my big Mario status, but I get to the end at a decent time, giving me just 140 seconds to finish the final 3 levels of the game. I don't even know if that's doable, but I was definitely about to find out. I take damage at the start of 8-2, however, that wasn't a big deal. I primarily only had the mushroom for this particular reason, but it did mean that from here on out, I had to play perfect. I get to the bullet zone and nail every jump, each bringing me one step closer to keeping my butthole tight. I was feeling it. I was golden, and I was infinite. And then that jump is lethal, bro. Shit. I jump into another hole, and with that, my fate was sealed. So, what did I learn? Speedrunning isn't easy. In fact, it's the exact opposite of easy, if there's a word for that. However, speedrunning stands for something that is so much more important than a competition or seconds on a clock. Speedrunning is just love for a game, caring about something enough to play it again and again, and learning ways to play better and improve your time. It's not always about a global competition or leaderboards. It's about enjoying the time spent setting goals for yourself in a game that you enjoy. I may not have gotten a 6-minute run, I may never make it into a top 500 leaderboard position, and I may blow out my ass eating something that my stomach can't handle. But what's important is that I had fun, and I hope that in watching this video, you had fun as well. And maybe, just maybe, you can find a silly little game to speedrun when you have some free time in your day. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe. I'm gonna go find spicy Korean food and a park to sit in. I'm Scooch, and I hope you have a wonderful day.